Hi everyone, and welcome to our story. Now, before half term, we were thinking about a man called Samuel. Do you remember Samuel? Samuel was a prophet, which meant he had special messages from God to tell God's people. And today we're hearing about a time when Samuel was a bit older, and Samuel was given a very special job by God. He was told that he was going to go and find the next king of God's people. So that was Samuel's job. So God told Samuel to go to a man called Jesse. This is Jesse. And God said that one of Jesse's sons was going to be the next king. So Samuel went to Jesse and he said, Jesse, I need to see your sons. Now, Jesse had a lot of sons. So Jesse went off and he brought out his first son. Now, Samuel looked at Eliab, that was his name, and Eliab was strong, and Eliab was good looking, and Samuel thought, wow, this has got to be the next king. But God said something really interesting and really important. God said, no, this one is not the next king. You see, what God said is, people look at the outward appearance of somebody. People look at whether someone's tall or handsome or good at things or clever. But God looks at the heart. What God is interested in is what's inside a person. Man looks at the outward appearance. God looks at the heart. So Samuel went back to Jesse. And basically Samuel went and met all of Jesse's sons. And each one, God said, well, this one isn't going to be king. So Samuel said to Jesse, well, I've seen all your sons. Are you sure you don't have any more sons? Is there anyone I haven't met? And Jesse said, well, actually, there is one son you haven't met. But he's out in the fields with the sheep. He's not very important. He's young. But, if you really want to meet him, I'll go and get him. So Jesse went and brought his last son. And his last son, his youngest, was called David. David had been out looking after the sheep. And when Samuel saw David, God said, yes, this is the one who's going to be king of Israel, the king that I choose. Now, in those days, they didn't actually give the king a crown. So what Samuel did is he took oil and he poured it over David's head. And that was a sign that David was going to be king. Now, there's one thing I didn't tell you about where this happened. Now, Jesse lived in a town called Bethlehem. Can any of you think of somebody else who was born in Bethlehem? You can think. You think of anyone else who was born in Bethlehem? Yes, that's right. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Now, you see, David was a great king of God's people, but Jesus is the greatest king of all. And Jesus was someone whose heart was always right before God. He never did anything wrong. Jesus didn't look anything special. He wasn't particularly tall. He wasn't particularly handsome, but his heart was always right before God. So he was the greatest king of all, the king that we all need. So to remember that, well, our song today, we're going to sing Jesus is the King. It's a song that we've sung lots before, and we're going to remind ourselves that Jesus really is the best king of all.